It's Monday night, and you know what that means. The Jersey First Television Network proudly brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk, and certainly I am the generational talent in Garden State Media. Folks, I'll continue to be your source for strong, fearless, independent journalism right here in the state of New Jersey. Folks, I'm the hero you need right now because as the establishment media continues to lie to you every single day and just be of an immense disservice to all of you, guess who never will be? Fernando Uribe. That's right, folks. Happy Monday on this, the 14th of July, as we're continuing on here during the summer months. I want to thank you all for tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so right now on Facebook Live via StreamYard, certainly on the Jersey First YouTube page, and of course on all of our social media platforms. Speaking of which, if you haven't done so already, click that button real quick and make sure you like Real Talk with Fernando Uribe, along with Jersey First TV, along with making sure that, hey, if you check us out on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, share, and most importantly, click on that bell button and make sure you're subscribed to all the great content brought to you by the Jersey First Television Network. And of course, wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Spotify or SoundCloud, maybe you're driving down on Monday, down to Point Pleasant for Tiki Mondays, maybe just doing some food shopping, walking your dog, whatever it is you're doing, you're either in your car, you're on your smartphone, whatever it is, folks, there's some mobile device near you that you have on you. Trust me, download Jersey First and take us with you everywhere and anywhere you go throughout these summer months. And folks, I can't say enough what a privilege it is to be on the dream team of Garden State Media. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it is Jersey First TV. Of course, brand new episodes of the Nader Narrative premiere every Thursday, hosted by my outstanding tag team partner, the great Elizabeth Nader. And of course, brand new episodes of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe premiere every Monday night live. Of course, check your local listings for start times. And we appreciate you making this a part of your Monday night viewing, even with the rain, whatever it is, folks. I'm sure you want to be inside. It's muggy, it's humid, it's sticky. Hey, since you're inside with a nice AC on, check us out here. And thank you for supporting Jersey First TV. Folks, you want to stick around for final thoughts because you know what? Yes, I could certainly keep eviscerating the local clowns in Hudson County, and that's one of the reasons why, let's be honest, the traffic with Real Talk continues to be very strong, all organic, nothing boosted, no ads are bought for whatsoever, folks. That's all organic traffic you see behind me. Again, I owe it to all of you, my loyal viewing audience, all my family, my friends, neighbors, colleagues, classmates, even the haters out there who can't help themselves and still tune in every week because you need your weekly dose of Fernando Uribe in your life. Trust me, I know that full well. Folks, again, you want to stick around for final thoughts because, well, as I said, certainly I love eviscerating all the useless women in Hudson County politics and in activism. Of course, whether it's Caleb Burrell, whether it is, obviously, you're seeing Erin Ferrier, as well as Amy Wilson, Megan Ixom, all the rest of them, obviously, Stuart Thomas. I mean, again, these are just useless, insufferable women in Hudson County politics and in activism. And while it's easy to eviscerate them because they give me so much material, I'm going to take a break this week from kind of cooking these useless humans. And why not transition to another useless human? That's right, folks. It's Uncle Dave, David Cruz. And yes, folks, as we all know, David Cruz obviously is, not working during the summer, as we know. And listen, I could go for the low-hanging fruit, of course, with Uncle Dave, being that I'm Cuban and he's Puerto Rican, and I could maybe make a joke about work ethic or something. I could maybe go for the low-hanging fruit and get a little specific, but I'm not going to do that. See, I'm better than that. What I'll do is I won't be lazy. I'll actually come up with some original material. And, unlike David Cruz, who right now is just sitting at home, scratching his ass and playing with his dick. Well, that might be a little difficult. I don't think he's seen his dick since the Bush administration. Which one? I'll leave it up to you. But in any event, I'll kind of give Dave a little credit for doing some work recently, but at the end of the day, he's part of a bigger problem in our establishment media apparatus where they're always lying to you and blatantly just taking an outright leftist take on everything. So I'll give you a little sample of that a little bit later during final thoughts. You definitely want to stick around for that, folks. You definitely don't want to miss it. It was interesting to see Uncle Dave actually working outside. I mean, Dios mío, qué milagro. Porque ese huevón nunca trabaja. But in any event, we'll tackle that a little bit later during final thoughts. And folks, again, listen, it is election season here in the state of New Jersey. And of course, not just municipal races, which really I'm the only one that's covering that on a consistent basis. Not just here in Hudson County, obviously. We have some very interesting mayoral races, certainly municipal council races as well. but throughout the state, folks, and also all 80 state assembly seats are up for grabs. And we'll talk about that as well throughout the program, folks, and certainly the upcoming gubernatorial race, which, as we all know, is starting to get a little fickle right now. So, why not talk to someone who's really in the know politically and a guy who I respect wholeheartedly, folks. He is the founder and the publisher of the Central Jersey Newswire, and a guy who is a fellow professional wrestling fan. And we'll get to a little bit, we all know SummerSlam is coming to MetLife Stadium in just a couple of weeks. On the first weekend of August here, the first ever two-night SummerSlam. And for those of you that have been growing up watching WWF and now WWE, we always enjoyed watching SummerSlam in August. Late August, as a matter of fact, but it's pretty early this year. We'll talk about that and other stuff here on the program, folks. He's Mike DeRobbio, joins us live right now on Real Talk. Mike, how are you?
Fernando, man, what an opener and very generous intro. Thanks for having me, Fernando. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I'm raising hell. Listen, it's all gas, no brakes here on this program, brother.
That's the only way to be. I think the only person who's been more all gas and no brakes than you is Jack, and he certainly needs to be if outside influence is going to pour $20 million having socialists take over our state.
Yeah, well, and let's dive right into that right now. Obviously, we know it's a very testy and fickle primary season, Mike. Obviously, for both the Republicans and Democrats. Mike, Rebecca Cheryl, that's her birth name. I'm gonna call her by her birth name. Rebecca got across the finish line in a very hotly contested primary between, I would argue, six Democrats trying to out progressive who's more progressive of the progressives, And then, of course, on the Republican side, obviously, Jack Chiarelli going for his third try here against radio personality Bill Spadea, and obviously others who joined in the race. Rebecca and Jack are headed on a collision course, as they say, for November the 4th. Listen, let's start first with the Democrat challenger here, obviously, in this race. And, after 8 years of a Democrat governor, Mike, and listen, I was the only one that ever called that race close in 2021. I mean, Jack had a chance to win that 4 years ago. I think that, listen, I don't want to revisit, whether or not there was chicanery, whether or not there was, some electoral bullshit. But the bottom line was, I called that race very tight. I knew that the governor was not popular at that time due to COVID restrictions, the way he shut down the state longer than he should have, the way he made sure that schools were shut down longer than they should have been, caving to the unions. And, obviously, Assembly Speaker Coughlin and, Senate President at the time, Steve Sweeney, and then obviously Nick Scutari did not make things any easier for New Jersey residents. It seems like Rebecca Sherrill's in a real big pickle here. I mean, obviously you want to separate yourself and make your candidacy organic, but it's hard to escape the last 8 years of Democrat rule in Trenton.
Exactly. And look, Vanilla Harris, as they call her, isn't doing herself any favors by just being perpetually awkward. 2021, where Jack was down, I believe around this time, 26 points.
Yeah.
And then look at how that shaked out. But 2021 was a referendum on COVID. It didn't matter where you were in the United States. If you were in a blue state or a purple state, it was a referendum on COVID. What this is now is a referendum on the status quo in New Jersey. Do we want to remain overtaxed, overregulated, our rights constantly under assault, a attorney general that's weaponizing, the justice system against us, developers coming in and meddling in our elections, radical judges ruling via fiat on housing development and bankrupting our municipalities. Meanwhile, we have the largest budget in Trenton that they've ever produced, and apparently the best job you can get is a Newark City school teacher. Because apparently you're, boozing and partying on the taxpayer dimes. I wish I got that memo. But if everything I just said and everything that you've covered has even give you a scintilla of anger, Jack Ciattarelli is your guy, because it's not just a Republican coming in and we're going to have Republican policies. Jack is the factory reset to New Jersey politics that we need. We need NJ Doge. We need parents to be at the front of the conversation, not Matt Platkin, not interest groups, right? We need parents there. We need to finally tell anybody who wants to develop off of our coast to politely F off.
Yeah.
And we want to make it so that people can start their family and retire in New Jersey. We want to make it work for families. And that's why, you know, the Eagleton poll that came out, to bring it back to the first part, the Eagleton poll that came out, I'm getting shades of 2021 again. The problem was the Eagleton poll said that, oh, well, we polled adults. Are they registered to vote? What does adults mean? I saw what Mr. Russell had tweeted, and I agree. It's an absolute steaming pile of crap.
Yeah.
They probably just went outside your local abortion clinic and just asked, "How would you feel about a Republican?" And then threw Jack Ciattarelli's name on a white paper and said, "Here's our poll." At least Monmouth University had the dignity to close its doors. Eagleton is just pushing out a filth factory of statistics.
Yeah, and listen, as a devoted Rutgers alumnus, I'm ashamed about the Eagleton Institute. I mean, at one point in time, it was what I thought a very credible polling type of apparatus, and that's not the case anymore. And again, as a Rutgers alumnus, it breaks my heart because anything that devalues what Rutgers is, really gets to the core of me. And you're absolutely right. I think that polling is absolute bullshit. The idea, and listen, you nailed on some really good points there. I mean, I talk about this all the time on this program. I mean, we have the highest property taxes in the country. Okay. Here where I live in Hudson County, I mean, fortunately for me, my state senator is also my mayor, and he does an exceptional job at keeping property taxes very reasonable. Again, Mike, I walk 2 blocks, I look at Manhattan. Okay. I walk 2 blocks and there's a light rail that takes me to Hoboken, and I can get into like Manhattan or MetLife Stadium for SummerSlam or take the train within 8 minutes. So, I mean, I know where I'm living. Obviously I'm paying for my location.
Yeah.
But when I just drive a little bit north of me on what's called River Road, and obviously you can see the whole skyline here, and we go into southern Bergen County, I mean, we start hitting some municipalities like Alpine and Cresskill and Dumont. We're talking about, you know, 18, 19, $20,000. We go a little bit south and maybe take 78 after you leave the airport. I mean, you're hitting like Short Hills and Springfield and places like that. We're talking about 24, 25, $26,000. So, the idea that the property tax continue to go up. This past January, we just saw the last phase of the gas tax go up. And even though that crude oil is down in production, thank the Lord, due to a new administration in Washington, we're still paying to something for a gallon of regular gas, where it really should be at $2. I mean, we're paying 49 cents more because of the gas tax, which, again, and that started back in Chris Christie days. So I'll be fair about it. But the legislature and Chris Christie's worked up this scam about all this revenue would go into the Transportation Trust Fund. What exactly am I supposed to trust when it comes to this fund as it pertains to transportation? AAA the other day, I think last year, did a survey of the roads in these United States. New Jersey's in the bottom third in the country when it comes to roads.
I'll do you one better. It's
Sure.
in the bottom third of roads, and for all the money that goes to environmental nonsense and to green, liberal green energy pipe dreams. Speaking of pipe dreams, we have the second worst tap water in the nation, and that is from a Biden era EPA.
Yeah.
So again, if all of this tax money, right, is going to making this great Garden State utopia, I don't know. I'm not seeing it.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not drinking it either.
No, absolutely. And again, and also too, I mean, obviously it's the summer months, and while we're still paying lower than we did in the last 4 years for gas, thank the Lord, it's still expensive. It's still over $2. Also, the tolls on the Parkway and Turnpike went up in January again, I think in the final phase of what was a slow transition. And also, I mean, listen, don't even get me started on the state budget. I mean, the state budget has gotten fatter than David Cruz and Chris Christie, okay? Or the latest Victoria's Secret models modeling lingerie, for God's sakes. I mean, it has become so egregious in Trenton when it comes to spending. And listen, I'm not an economics professor, but I can tell you as an educator that what Trenton is tried to sell us for the last few years was, well, we have a surplus. No, what you had was federal COVID money coming in from Washington. That's not a surplus. A surplus is, hey, by the way, let's look at where we can cut some fat out of the budget. Let's cut out wasteful spending like, I don't know, the Office of New Americans to coddle illegals. Or, for example, also taking taxpayer dollars, Mike, and putting into a legal fund to help illegals gain legal counsel to fight deportations. I mean, that is the wasteful spending that we have seen in Trenton. And for Cheryl, she's walking a very difficult tightrope. She can disavow and throw Phil Murphy under the bus for the last 8 years, but she also has to come up with an organic message like, well, I want to make New Jersey more affordable. Well, no shit. But guess what? Why is it unaffordable? Can you please say the quiet part out loud?
Yeah. Well, she had that. I guess it was with Brenda Flanagan or someone had the one interview of, what policy do you want changed? Uh, uh, More grant programs. So your great idea is to just go give us money. I thought, then where does our money go right now? Apparently, it goes to overdevelopment and shitty water. You know, God bless Senator O'Scanlan. If you go to his website, you can
Yep.
see all of his press releases, all of the budgets that the Senate GOP has put forward, and you can see in great detail all the pork that has come out of this budget. And while this budget drama is going on, and you and I can sit here until we're old men and talk about all the horrible things that's in the budget. You know what I couldn't stop thinking about were two types of people. One, the parents or even single parent that's sitting doing their bills at the kitchen table, figuring out how they're going to afford to live this month, how they're going to afford to feed their family, how they're going to afford to take the boat into the city, or how they're going to pay for Easy Pass, how they're going to pay to survive, because we have energy rates going up. We have all of this stuff that's coming onto the taxpayer. For those in Trenton who are watching, just so you know, we're paying for all of this. For, the Newark School District to go nuts, for the French Art Museum to go restore, whatever local hot dog stand, that was featured in a Bruce Springsteen video. You know, the other groups of people that I'm thinking of are people like me, people in their late 20s, early 30s. I'm certainly at the latter part of my early 30s, not to age myself. But, Tucker Carlson had something interesting. If you want to measure the health of a society, don't look at GDP, the supply chain, inflation, all that. Look at who's buying homes. Are younger generations of people buying homes in their communities so that they can contribute and be a part of it, so that they can actually have, rather than just have an R and a D next to their name and whether or not they're registered to vote, do they have a slice of the American dream that they can sink their teeth into and enjoy, as opposed to just, oh well, I'll rent here and I'll rent here? Because the people who are benefiting from these sky high property taxes are developers and their private equity cronies. Oh well, they can afford to rent, and well, rent is high and so is that, so now we have to have more affordable housing. And half the time when they build affordable housing, it's market rate, and they're supposed to be building, oh, well, it's only 5 units. So only 5 people benefit from affordable housing.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, municipalities are getting bankrupt.
No,
Enough is enough. And like I said, this is a referendum on the status quo in New Jersey, because I'm telling you now, and I think Jack's campaign, like you said at the beginning, all gas and no brakes, I think they've done a fantastic job of showing up and specifically shutting up, because one of the things that Jack does is he listens. All I saw from Mikey Sherrill just down the road at the Atlantic Highlands Fair was she's talking at people. All Jack needs to do is talk to you and listen about where you are and how he can help you achieve the American dream in New Jersey. And I say go for it. Keep going, Jack.
and listen, you said it perfectly about, I think, the optic that exists between the two campaigns. And we'll get to Jack Chiarelli in a moment. But, the Cheryl campaign makes me laugh sometimes because, for example, she was at DJ's last weekend serving drinks, right? Now, first of all, for any of us that have gone to DJ's, you know that if you're really at DJ's, you're going to be so impaired, you're not going to know who the hell
Yeah.
serving drinks. So the next morning, if you woke up and looked at your Instagram and somebody said, oh, yeah, Mikey Cheryl was, serving drinks, three things. Number one, the person might be like, who? Two, like, oh, I was at DJ's. And three, like, oh, shit, I'm in the picture. Like, to be fair, if you were really at DJ's, you're not paying attention who's serving drinks. And I
Yeah.
think that optic doesn't really show a genuine side to her. I mean, again, let's be honest. I mean, as a former bartender myself, someone who works in nightlife, trust me, it's not an easy job. So I'm sure at most maybe 4 or 5 drinks, probably the easiest drinks in the world to make are pouring beers. And then, of course, you saw the fundraiser over the weekend at Phil Murphy's house in Middletown with Barack Obama. I mean, maybe Barack Obama didn't get the memo from 2009, but he came to New Jersey twice to try to help John Corzine. That didn't work out too well for
No,
John
not at all.
Corzine. And I think that, the political capital that Barack Obama thinks he once had, that's evaporated. That's gone. So I don't know how successful that dinner or fundraiser was this weekend for Cheryl, but I can tell you that, listen, during the summer, political junkies like you and I pay attention. Again, a lot of New Jerseyans probably won't start paying attention until after Labor Day. We'll start seeing ads during, football season, during the World Series,
Yeah.
at the start of hockey and basketball season. But I think that right now, Cheryl's still struggling to find, I think, a specific positioning. And again, I'm not trying to be malicious. I'm calling balls and strikes here. Like, it's still not a campaign that's very inspiring. On the flip side, when it comes to Jack, and I've talked to Jack personally on multiple occasions during this campaign, this primary season. I've talked on the phone briefly with him. And I was at the debates, obviously, that were hosted by the New Jersey Globe. And, I got to talk to Jack for a few minutes, after the press scrum. And he felt very good, obviously, leading up to primary day. But I got to tell you, I think the biggest concern, though, Mike, is, how fickle are Republicans going to be during this election? 4 years ago, it was a fickle primary season with Phil Rizzo, with her Singh, and people that had no business running. And it just made it very corrosive for Jack. And I think that you saw a lot of people stayed home. I think Chris Russell was on my show, I think shortly after the election. And he mentioned a horrible stat to me. I think only 35% of registered Republicans came out to vote in 2020. Even if you just have half of the registered Republican base coming out to vote, Phil Murphy doesn't win another term. And I keep hearing a lot of this social media chatter from Bill Spadea supporters that, well, our guy didn't win and I don't trust Jack. I'm sorry. Take the L. You got to flip New Jersey and make it red. It's as simple as that. I get it. Hey, listen, sometimes our guy or girl doesn't win elections. Oh, boo effing who, as they say. I get it. But guess what? Jack is that reset that New Jersey needs now more than ever, about property taxes, about denouncing all and basically eradicating all this woke bullshit, the pronouns, coddling the alphabet mob, certainly, acquiescing to illegals and all these activist groups that coddle illegals. That shit has to end. It's got to end with
Mhm.
Jack.
It absolutely does. And, let's touch on the Republican primary here real quick. I get it. All right. And look, life's hard. Sometimes you have to wear a helmet. Like, your candidate loses. Tough shit. And not only that, he lost Ocean County, Bill Spadea, but he lost to a really poor margin. And, it shows two things. One, that his radio show has absolutely no pull. And two, you can be as mad as you want about things. If you're not inspiring people that better days are ahead, if you don't have a policy plan so that people can trust you, you're not going to win. Now, that's the most I'll say, because I know the Spadia universe is going to come at me on Twitter or Facebook, and I'll get another threat again, as I had a number of them. But here's the deal. In life, we're not going to agree on everything. I bet you and I are going to debate Bret Hart versus Goldberg and where that happened. Not everybody is always going to agree with each other. Welcome to life.
Thou shall never speak ill of Bret the Hitman Hart. Folks, on this program, just for any future guests, thou shall never speak ill of the best there is, the best there was, and the best.
And one of the best that ever will be.
That's right. I'm sorry. Continue, Mike. I'm sorry.
But you see, like, we can have a jovial disagreement, but at the end of the day, we want a good wrestling match. We can have a disagreement on, what the path forward may be, but we do know that the unified path forward is having a unified party, standing against whatever the Democrats have, working for our county and our municipal candidates and for our assembly candidates. And if they have an R next to their name, you know what? Vote for them and hold them accountable. Right? Make sure you watch their voting records. Make sure that you show up. And I have two wonderful assembly members, Vicky Flynn and Jerry Scharfenberger, and I have Senator O'Scanlan. If I ever have a problem or a concern or a thought, they're a phone call away. They're an email away. Not to beat up on our neighbors here and to our fellow GOPers, but you know government is only as good as the people you send there. And if you're not keeping them accountable, and if you're not communicating with them regularly, then it makes it more difficult to do their job, but it also makes it more difficult for them to have a pulse on what's really going on. So, my message to all Republican voters is this is not an election to sit out. You need to be proactive from the top of the ticket all the way down. Show up to town halls, like and share stuff on social media. Be vocal in your community. Go get yard signs. Go offer to go to your county Republican headquarters and make phone calls and knock on doors. You know what? Even if, I'm going to quote the great Ronald Reagan, just because someone disagrees with you 20% of the time doesn't mean that they're an enemy, right? And I'm probably botching that quote, but we need to band together, or we're all, like the founders said, we're all going to hang separately. And by hanging separately, I guess, we'll move to Florida or Pennsylvania, which isn't too bad if you think about it. But I want to be here in New Jersey.
Same here.
I
Same
want to
here.
live my American dream in New Jersey, not in hurricane country.
Listen, same here, folks. And if you just joined us live right now, it is 5:55 here on the East Coast. My guest tonight is the distinguished founder and publisher of the Central Jersey Newswire, Mike DeRobbio, joins us live here on Real Talk. Folks, again, like, comment, and share tonight's episode on all of your social media platforms. It helps gets the show, obviously, with the algorithm, helps get the show to more people. So we appreciate that here on the podcast. And certainly, folks, drop a comment or question in the comment section. We'd love to hear from all of you here on the Jersey First Television Network. Now, having said that, Mike, obviously the campaigns are rocking and roaring. Obviously, you mentioned about Jack. He was just in Newark over the weekend. He's been going up and down the state. I think Cheryl's been a little more calculated. She's been going to kind of safe areas. The People's Republic of Montclair, certainly the governor's mansion in Middletown. Just a few weeks ago, obviously, we all saw that demonstration of all the cat ladies and Karens and all the insufferable feminists and all the social justice warriors and all the woke fools on No King's Day with their just nonstop bullshit in various municipalities around the state. And of course, she went to her audience, obviously, right? All these smelly cat ladies and Karens, and we're all there with signs about, oh my God, the end of democracy, the end of freedom. While you dissent freely, that's what she was doing. And it just shows a stark contrast between the audience that Cheryl is trying to garner, as opposed to Jack, where, listen, I think getting the president's endorsement during that primary was pivotal for Jack. And I think it reminds us too that, on November the 5th of 2024, very different demographics voted all across this country for the reelection of Donald Trump. And even here in New Jersey, Donald Trump flipped a lot of counties and came within 4 points of winning New Jersey's 14 electoral votes, which had not happened since George H.W. Bush in 1988. So there was a fire for him. I was there last May in Wildwood, right on the beach. I felt like Tony Schiavone and Bobby the Brain Heenan during WCW's Bash at the Beach in '95, right there. And there were 50,000 people there for President Trump. And you saw the enthusiasm. You saw that in New Jersey. I think Republicans got smart. They voted by mail. They voted early, things that they resisted in 2021. Yep. And guess what? That's what got turnout for Donald Trump in New Jersey. And I think that, there was this lack of enthusiasm for Kamala, when she wasn't drunk on vodka, whatever. And it just seems to me that Jack is riding that momentum. Registrations are up for Republicans. Obviously, right? I think at one point, Democrats had a 1.2 million voter lead in the registration. That's down now. I think it's down to like 700,000. And again, shout out to people like Scott Pressler and other influencers that have come to New Jersey that have been helping with this mission. And I just got to say, I think that Jack has the wind to his back here. I think he has some momentum, and so do Republicans, so do conservatives, and even independents who want more parental rights, who want to make sure that we're done with Matt Plotkin as an attorney general, that we're done with coddling illegals, that we're done with maybe more responsible spending in Trenton. I think Jack isn't the underdog in this race. So I don't care what Eagleton says in their polling. I don't care what other polling says. You talk to people, and I talk to people all statewide that tell me right now, this is Jack's race to lose. It's a different vibe to him than it was in 2021. he looks a lot better to win this time around, and I think he's going to win.
Look, I agree. I entirely agree with everything you said, and I'll even add to this. The most important thing is, like Trump last year, he has the enthusiasm, and you can never ever discount enthusiasms. I tell people all the time, if you give me 50 door knockers as opposed to $5,000, I'll take the door knockers any day because people love enthusiasm and it inspires them to vote, and that's what we need, right? No, Vanilla Harris is not inspiring anybody. All right, I bet she can barely inspire her husband. She could barely inspire people in Congress. That's why she's coming back here, right? Um, the other thing I'd add too is, yes, it's great that we have Scott Pressler and everyone else coming here, but what you're also seeing is, certain chairmen, like, my chairman here, Sean Golden, in Monmouth County. You're also seeing it with Carlos Santos in Union County. You've been seeing it with, other chairs across the state where they're making, strategic investments and also making, strategic moves to gin up voter contact and to gin up early voting and vote by mail. And that's what's going to make us a much more dynamic party, right? Is by reaching out to those people. And Jack has a strategy to do it. And what I remind people is, we're New Jerseyans, right? We want everything now, right? That's why we yell, that's why we yell at people on the parkway because, we're going 80 and the other person's going the speed limit. But, one of the things I tell people is what Trump did is when he defined Kamala Harris early, before she even announced, when they knew Joe Biden was going to drop out. And to be fair, he defined Joe Biden when he was the Democrat nominee, or when him and Kamala were anointed the nominees, respectfully, right? That's what Jack's doing with Mikey now. He's defining who she is, an out of touch elite that went to Congress to make money. And you can see all those stock transactions on MikeyMadeMillions.com. While the rest of us were figuring out how to penny pinch, she's getting, strategic financial advice from the Armed Services Committee, right? Deciding whether or not we're going to go to war so she can cash in on violence. But Jack's team is doing that, and you're going to start to see who Mikey Sherrill really is, right? Who Rebecca Sherrill really is. Another out of touch elite liberal who knows that the Democrat Party is far more progressive than she is, right? But she doesn't want to entertain that, right? But she'll also dance around the issue of, supporting Zoran Mamdani, or however the hell you pronounce his name, uh, and his anti-Semitic bull crap, right? And it shows a distinct out of touch impracticality that Cheryl and the campaign have. They just picked up the former director of the Senate Democrat office in New Jersey. Well, I wonder why, because who knows the budget, and who, the Democrat side of the budget, and who knows policies better than that guy when it should be Mikey Sherrill. So, once again, you have Democrats that have these pie in the sky ideals. Mikey Sherrill is part of the generation where she was too young to be part of the civil rights movement and the feminist movement, right? She was too young, she probably wasn't even around for, Vietnam, right? But they all want to be these revolutionaries. They all want to be these protesters. And guess what? Your parents and your grandparents already did the work. Go find something else to be pissed off about. How about the fact that your kids can't own homes? How about the fact that our dollar's being devalued? How about the fact, again, just because, I like my water, that we have some of the worst tap water in the nation, but you're trying to move all the way to electric stoves. You know, Jack has maintained since day one what his priorities are: ending sanctuary cities, having an energy plan that works, appointing judges that actually believe in the rule of law, and not giving special favors to developers and private equity, of making New Jersey work for people. The only thing Mikey Sherrill knows how to work is a private donor dinner.
And it's interesting that you mentioned, obviously, sanctuary cities. Actually, that was going to be my next topic I was going to discuss with you here. There's a stark contrast, certainly, between Cheryl and Chitterelli on this issue. Certainly, Cheryl has been more than happy. Number one, not to vote for the Lincoln Riley Act, which I thought was really despicable.
This it's just disturbing.
Even our fellow colleague next door, basically, Josh Gottheimer, voted for the bill, which makes sense on all levels, which showed you that, Josh Gottheimer was really reasonable when it came to being middle of the road and just being like commonsensical when it comes to, how to fight illegal immigration and how to really prosecute dangerous illegals. Certainly, we have seen that Attorney General Matt Platkin is wasting taxpayer dollars and wanting to sue the Trump administration. Obviously, also to the idea that we're seeing that, the governor, upon taking office in January of 2018, declared New Jersey a sanctuary state. It wasn't codified into state law, but I think if you leave it up to some Democrats in Trenton and possibly a governor, Cheryl, she might just want to do that, and she'll have the support, obviously, because the majorities in the state assembly and the state senate. Again, this is why this race is so important. I think we've seen, fully well the impact of ICE in communities all across this country. I mean, the border is secure, much more secure than it was in the last 4 years. And here's something that I always tell all these like left-wing, just children in New Jersey and sycophants that are they're all concerned about ICE being in New Jersey. Well, you know what? If Sleepy Joe didn't have the border wide open, maybe we wouldn't have to worry about illegals running rampant in New Jersey and other states around the country. Like, did anyone ever stop to think about that? But that's how myopic politically I think the left is in New Jersey, Mike, that, they can't see the forest from the trees. And I think that this is an issue that Jack can run on and can win. I think right now, listen, it's mid-July. A lot could change, but the economy still looks very good. I watch the market every day. Inflation is at its lowest in 4 years. Gas prices nationally, well, maybe not California, but nationally are much lower than they were 4 years ago during the summer months. I can't remember ever filling up my tank with $2-something of gas ever in the last 4 years. We're seeing food prices go down significantly. And listen, for a lot of these Karens and cat ladies that are marching about the end of democracy, I mean, if anyone should be happy, it's them, with food prices going down. We're also seeing, obviously, international conflicts being resolved quite promptly with this president. Again, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of check marks that from the Trump administration that can trickle down and help Jack in New Jersey. And at the end of the day, what's Cheryl and, obviously, the state Democrat committee going to run on? Oh, we hate Trump? Cool, you can hate Trump all you want, but at the end of the day, again, inflation's down. The market is strong. We're seeing food prices going down. We're seeing wages going up. And for people that live on overtime or tips, guess what? Those taxes are going to be, obviously eroded. So if you're a Democrat, whether you're running for governor, and we'll get to the assembly races in a minute, what are you going to run on? Oh, well, Trump sucks? Not from where I'm looking at economically.
Not what last year told us.
No.
No, it's again, what you have to understand about the left, you're right in calling them myopic, is they have a political philosophy rooted entirely in emotion. And, Plato has talked about this, Socrates talked about it, the founders talked about this, even Lincoln talked about this, and, the better angels of our nature. A society can't run on emotions. I say that as an Italian who frequently talks with his hands and gets very emotional and cries at certain movies or cries when he, sees a good wrestling match. But, you know, like I said, they have an entire pie in the sky platform that isn't going to work. And if they just stop to think about the deportations, all of the people that have been pulled for deportation, right? These are people with criminal records ranging from petty theft all the way to being a pedophile or a sex offender or a murderer, right? These aren't just, they went to, a weed farm in California. Well, you know why? Because they were there legally. And they also knew that there were people there with criminal records. I'm sorry that it affected your precious weed farm, right? And look, I don't doubt that there's been, mistakes along the way. Welcome to government. Government makes mistakes and should be accountable for it where it needs to be. But at the same time, look at who we're removing from our society. Yes, if you come to this country illegally, you should identify yourself. You should pay some form of a back tax or some type of fee or something. And you know what? Washington will work on that, and you'll have the typical amnesty fight that a bunch of people will have. But who they're deporting now are indeed the worst of the worst. And those are people that need to be removed from society, absolutely. And they should have been removed yesterday. They frankly should never have been in the country. But
Correct.
again, this requires stopping and thinking and having a sober analysis of that. Not just, oh, everything's racist or everything's misogynist. I'll give you the other thing. Phil Murphy has turned New Jersey into, abortion tourism. Now, yes, abortion is legal here, but you think so little of women that women can't raise a child or that a woman can't live a full life unless it kills a child. And then say, well, you have to pack up everything because they're going to ban abortion and you need to come here and give us money. How about we fix the affordability problem in this state? We
Yeah.
fix the tax structure in this state so we don't make a whole bunch of money by killing children. But the other part of that too is they need to have the abortion tourism industry because their main donor and their main campaign apparatus, Planned Parenthood, certainly benefits from that too. And that's going to keep the donations and the PAC donations and all the votes coming because they prey on the fears of vulnerable women, and it's disgusting.
Listen, I'm with you completely, and I'm surprised Cheryl hasn't weaponized reproductive rights just yet during the cycle. It's still early, but that's another thing too. Again, and I've talked about this on this program repeatedly. Here in New Jersey, it's been codified into state law. Okay, obviously we saw what happened with the Dobbs decision. Every state, obviously for anyone that ever took U.S. history understands what the 10th Amendment is. I mean, that's how it's viewed now, and that's how it's enacted nationally, and that's fine. That's what states' rights are all about. Here in New Jersey, again, listen, it got codified into state law. Well, I'm always baffled, Mike, when I see these activists, whether it's Planned Parenthood or all these like women, women's groups here in New Jersey that bitch and moan about, well, abortion's not legal in Tennessee. Who cares? You don't live in Tennessee. You live here.
Exactly.
Okay. And also, too, here in New Jersey, it is ultimately the one of the easiest states in the country to terminate a pregnancy. Listen, if you're a woman and a biological woman with a vagina, a uterus, and ovaries, by the way, because those are the only people that get pregnant, not pregnant people, women,
No.
biological female humans, by the way, because we got a lot of idiots out there that never took a biology course, clearly. Listen, if you want to terminate your pregnancy up until the ninth month, you can do that in New Jersey. Tragically, you can do that in New Jersey. Even if, there's no endangerment of the woman's life or the health of the baby, you can do that in New Jersey. Okay, here in New Jersey as well, it's summertime, fall's coming around, Mike, NFL's back, Sunday fun day. A lot of ladies go out, have way too many drinks on Sunday, Thursday football, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Maybe Monday morning they wake up next to a guy they don't not fond of waking up next to. Guess what? You can go to a CVS or Walgreens and pick up a Plan B. They've actually gone down in price. I know I've had to buy a few in my adult life. So they've gone down from $50 to $30. So here in New Jersey, there is no obstacle to terminate a pregnancy. Okay, so the idea that the vote blue, no matter who crowd, are going to eat this up about reproductive rights in New Jersey is just complete bullshit.
It is. And again, the Democrat Party and the modern left they are run by a political philosophy of emotion. And look at where that's gotten them. And frankly, look at where it's gotten us. Where the fact that you know a, the, you know we want to have electric stoves, and if there's a gas stove, we're all the ice caps are going to melt and we're all going to die. Well, and now we got to pay for that. And now we got to weaponize bureaucrats like the BPU, which should be totally disbanded, which I hope is on the chopping block for Governor Chitterelli. Uh, all of these pie in the sky dreams, they need to die. Look, when I was younger, man, I wanted to be world heavyweight champion. Now, uh, I'm certainly a heavyweight now, and I like to think sometimes I'm a champion, but you're not going to see me getting into a squared circle. You know why? Because I was 10 when I wanted to do that. It was an emotional thing. You know what I want now? I want I want to, actually own a piece of the American dream. I want to be able to keep building a business and living my life in New Jersey. I'd love to retire in New Jersey, right? I love it here. And that's the emotion that I have, right? That I'll just love for my community. You're not going to see that from the modern left. They like two things: the people who consistently buy into their bullshit
Yep.
and the people who consistently pay for their bullshit.
Oh, absolutely. Folks, if you're just joining us live right now, it's 6:11 here on the East Coast. My guest tonight is the founder and publisher of the Central Jersey Newswire, Mike DeRobbio, here live on the program. Folks, again, like, comment, and share. It certainly helps get the show out to more people. So we appreciate that. Mike, you mentioned Assemblywoman Victoria Flynn, who was on the show a few months ago, and I always love having her on. Certainly all 80 state assembly seats are up for grabs. And listen, up here in Hudson County where I live, it's as blue as Windex. It's as blue as Papa Smurf. Let's just say that. But there's a lot of vulnerable Democrats in Central and South Jersey that, again, while Democrats have a 52-28 majority in the assembly, with Jack at the top of the ticket and a lot of the momentum that Jack has, Republicans can maybe shave into that lead. I mean, I don't think flipping the assembly is realistic in this cycle. Might take a few, but the reality is that Republicans can maybe win 7, 8, maybe 9 seats. And again, shaving into that majority that Democrats have and could hopefully make a Governor Chitterelli his job a little bit easier with trying to maybe, pass some bipartisan bills in 2026, hopefully with him as governor. Where are you seeing vulnerable Democrats right now in these assembly races?
Well, I do see Margie Donlin and Luann Peter Paul in 11. I do see them being vulnerable. Remember that Jack carried Kim Olner and Marilyn Paperno when he ran, and they were very effective members of the assembly. I also see Avi Schnall in Lakewood, right? And Ned Thompson is, Ned Thompson is handily won his primary. He didn't have a primary opponent, but he got 597 petition signatures to appear on the ballot. That was the most of any Republican seeking an assembly seat this year. So Ned Thompson, the former conference leader from LD30, the former mayor of Wall, he's coming back. And, I talk to Ned quite frequently, and he's been watching the budget drama. He's been watching what's going on. And you know what? The Mikey Sherrill and the radical Democrats in Trenton are going to have a lot to answer for, especially to someone like Ned, who's an actuary, whose job it is to talk about fiscal health and fiscal risk. So you're going to see, the Democrats in 11 and the Democrat in 30, being threatened. Those are really the two races that I'm paying attention to. And I agree. I don't think that taking the assembly is, possible. And that's what differentiates us from liberals. They think they can have, an entire pie in the sky, happy utopia. We try to be realistic and we try to look to where we can be influential. But, also consider who those candidates are in 11 and in 30. Like I mentioned, Ned Thompson, a former mayor, former township committeeman, an actuary, right? Someone whose job it is and who has been trusted by multiple institutions and organizations to look at risk and to help people plan for their golden years. Who better to talk about how to retire in New Jersey and to promote policies that keep people in New Jersey than Ned Thompson? Look at Jessica Ford, right? Someone who is my age and has the professional expertise, because we need more people from the real world in Trenton, people who actually know how a company works, someone from the private sector who knows what it's like to be held accountable, right? And someone who also knows what responsible development looks like and what responsible housing looks like. And then, of course, Andy Wardell, a teacher. Who better to opine on what teachers are actually experiencing in New Jersey than a teacher himself, who says, hey, the school funding formula is patently wrong. It's designed entirely wrong. And by the way, the person who preys on the vulnerabilities of those teachers, where they all get defunded, and then Vingo Powell comes in on his white horse and says, don't worry, I'll make sure everything's refunded. he's the problem, and then he creates the problem by design so he can bring about the solution. But Vin's not on the ballot this year, and Margie and Luann are. And let's be honest, not two of the smartest people in the room either, and certainly not as affable as Andrew Wardell and Jessica Ford. And again, like I said, people gravitate towards enthusiasm. And I was with Monmouth County, and I was with Jessica and Andrew at the Ocean Grove parade. And to see them, handing the candy out to kids, shaking people's hands, having a smile on their face, and then seeing the Vingo Pal, Mikey Sherrill people of,
Well, it's interesting because it's my understanding that Vin Gopal is on that campaign team. So I'm not sure if he's the main campaign chair, but I mean, he has a lot to say about what this messaging is going to be for Cheryl, I think, moving forward in the summer and in the fall. I mean, obviously, Cheryl also has like some really despicable people on her campaign.
of course,
I know of, activists like Patricia Campos Medina and others who are, whether they're, I mean, take your pick. They're coddling
yeah.
illegals, they're
Well,
anti-Semites. I mean, take your pick. I
it's
mean,
it
there's
certainly also helps Vin to have a statewide donor network in the event that he wants other aspirations, say CD6 or potentially a U.S. Senate seat down the road. And by being
or if Jack wins, which I think he will, he could be that guy that kind of catapults himself up to the primary in 2029.
very well could. So, politics, I tell people all the time, half of politics is vanity. So you always got to look at, what people's real intentions are to be able to promote themselves. And, like you routinely say, we live in a state that has an elite media that want to push a narrative. You have a whole bunch of politicians, to steal from President Trump. Some I assume are good people that, say that they're for the common man and they're really for themselves. And you see that with Mikey Sherrill. You see that with Josh Gottheimer and Vin Gopal and all the rest of the Democrats, right? And we're stuck wondering, where are the real candidates here? And you're going to see those real candidates in LD30, in LD11. You see it with Jack Ciattarelli and with, thoroughly vetted commissioner candidates as well.
Absolutely. You mentioned obviously right now, certainly unions having a big influence on this race. We all know where the NGA is going to stand. We all know where the CWA is going to stand, and other major unions. Well, here's a big news flash for them. I mean, for public sector employees starting in 2026, you're going to see as high as a 26% increase in your health premiums. And if that's not something that Jack and Republican candidates all across the ballot this November can capitalize on, then I don't know what it will take, because obviously these public sector unions, and listen, don't even get me started on the NGEA and how crooked they are. They basically funneled millions of dollars into a failed candidate like Sean Spiller, who I think got like 3% of the vote. So that was embarrassing in itself. And I mean, I think that's criminal somewhere in there in terms of what happened with the funding there. But having said that, these unions keep voting against their own best interests. And it seems like the chickens are coming home to roost with healthcare premiums for state employees going up 26% coming up in 2026. Again, it just seems like keep voting against your own best interests. It's like that vote blue no matter who crowd.
Yeah, and I'll do you one better. It's going up almost 37%. And talk about a betrayal, of a betrayal of trust. These are some of the hardest working people that we know, right? These public employees that all they want to do is put food on their table and live a better life as anyone else would, and that's the vocation that they've chosen. But now they are responsible for the budget mismanagement of the Trenton Democrats. And, kudos to Senator O'Scanlan and to, Senator Bucco, who, I mean, were ringing the bell about this. It is, it's almost a sense of entitlement of, well, you're a public employee and, you can't really live without the politician padding your coffers. So, yeah, your premium is going to have to go up. Sorry. Absolutely disgusting. And my message to any any union member who's experiencing that increase, I don't know. Jack Ciattarelli is looking pretty good right now.
I'm with you about that. Folks, again, if you're just joining us live right now, it's 6:20 here on the East Coast. My guest tonight is the founder and publisher of the Central Jersey Newswire. Mike DeRobbio joins us live here on Real Talk. Folks, again, takes 5 seconds. Trust me, I've counted. Like, comment, and share. gets the episode out to more people, of course, and that only helps the algorithm, as they say, in today's social media world. Mike, obviously, as a fellow journalist, I talk about this weekly. The establishment media, not just nationally, but here in New Jersey, continues to disappoint us, do a disservice to us, and quite frankly, just aren't honest. And I go after a lot of these establishment media types in New Jersey, whether it's NJ Spotlight News, Insider NJ, the Bergen Record, whether it's the Star Ledger, NJ.com. It just seems like, and listen, there's a handful of good journalists out there. Brent Johnson with NJ Advanced Media, Terrence McDonald with the New Jersey Monitor. Even though sometimes his op-eds annoy me, but at the end of the day, and even here locally in Hudson County, we have great news sites like the Jersey City Times with its editor Aaron Morrill, John Hines with the Hudson County View. We also have the Tap Intos, the Patches, Steve Lennox and Al Sullivan. Certainly Hudson TV, HUD Post with its editor James Los Santos, and even statewide. There's a lot of great local news sites, but at the statewide level, whether it's David Cruz, Max Pizarro, Jay Lassiter, Charles Stile, Matt Friedman, it just seems like the establishment media is more concerned with, woke bullshit like pronouns and, oh my God, where's ICE conducting a raid tomorrow, or, other left wing bullshit. And at the end of the day, when, property taxes continue to skyrocket, spending continues to increase, and they're fine. They're making six figures at home, scratching their ass and playing with their dicks. But, for the rest of us, we have to kind of like try to understand how to make ends meet.
Absolutely, and the media itself was supposed to be the fourth estate, right? It was supposed to hold people accountable, right? And you know what? If someone who was a liberal or a conservative wanted to share their opinions on things, it was correctly put in the editorial or opinion section for you to consider. And so you could see things. And granted, back then we had a lot more, I like to think we had a lot more open minds about things. Now, the media, as you've seen, right, and those backing them, let's not forget the private equity that's backing all this media, right? They clearly have an agenda. I'll give you a great example. When Trump cut a number of boards from the National Park Service, one of which was, and I'm looking at it right now, Sandy Hook, right? Their FACA board. And NJ.com ran with Trump defunds Sandy Hook, which wasn't true at all. And then you have nonprofit organizations like the Sandy Hook Foundation. They want to be able to get donations, and they want to be able to say, listen, that board did not do its job. It met once or twice within 2 years, right? No funding was done. It's just a federal board that was appointed by regional political interests, and it's gone now. But who better to look at the future of Sandy Hook, to be able to invest in it and to restore it to its former glory, than locals? In fact, I would go so far as to say removal of the FACA board is a gigantic victory for people who love our national parks, for those who love our recreational areas, and for those in this area. I'm sure you have fond memories of going to Sandy Hook too. What better than locals to return it to its former glory? So shame on NJ.com for, applying something that isn't even true to President Trump. And the other thing I'd add too is, I can have a level of snark. You know why? Because I am biased. People know where I'm coming from, right? And I do care about local news, and I care about the truth, and I care about what's happening in our communities. So yes, I have a bent to it, and I'm unabashed about my political beliefs,
Sure.
right? And everybody knows it at this point, right? But what I can tell you is this: so much of what we see and hear is not only controlled by the media, but is controlled by private equity. I have yet to see an NJ.com article or an Asbury Park Press article taking to task affordable housing,
Yeah.
right? Because you can't say anything about affordable housing unless you're, a bigot, racist, sexist, what have you,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Of someone even just raising the question, no. It's how horrible Trump is, how, oh, Jack Ciattarelli's great, but and he's not going to be able to do it. Ha ha. The horrible cartoon about Jack Ciattarelli in NJ.com the other day. And, I used to, I know David Wildstein, who, you and I love and respect deeply, talks about when the Star Ledger was great. Well, you know what? I hate to be that guy, but in my lifetime, never found the Star Ledger to be great. And it's a shame that local news isn't as ubiquitous as it should be. Right? Yes, we have the tap intos and the patches, and they're all hyper local, but stuff that's going around the county. And one of the things that I'm doing is I'm trying to build an apparatus where we can talk to everybody. People who are fed up with the corporate media, people who are fed up with the snobby elitism in both the media and in politics, who their only thing is they want to live, work, and raise a family in New Jersey, and they want to be able to speak freely. And I know you provide that platform ever so well. I try to provide the same platform too. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to be the ultimate pushback against the snobby elitism that we see in media nowadays.
And Mike, what's interesting to me is the audacity that a lot of these journalists take, especially the ones that like go viral with videos, right? Like do either interviews or they do segments. Perfect example. You know, the late great Michael Aaron, who I got a chance to interview multiple times on this show and my other podcasts, was always consistent. You know, I knew deep down he was a very center left guy, but again, he was reporting the news and he never was blatant about it. You know, you watch stuff like NJ Spotlight News with Uncle Dave, David Cruz, and the journalists that he'll bring on there. It's like during budget season, they're all outraged. Oh, I can't believe the legislature waited until the last minute for the budget, and I can't believe this, and I can't believe that. You should be outraged a lot sooner than when the budget's due by law on June 30th, right? You should be concerned that people are getting priced out of New Jersey. But no, it's more like, well, you know, the president is making sure we conduct ICE raids and well, you know, and pronouns are important. And, well, you know, for some reason there are, you know, journalists out there. Listen, I've been the victim of cancel culture recently. I mean, there are activists and journalists who think that, you know, because somehow I took high school biology and passed it, you know, that somehow because I make a comment like, well, listen, if you believe that the earth is flat, you're delusional. Yeah, you can have your defense of it, but at the end of the day, you're delusional. No amount of hormones and makeup and dress up is going to make a man a woman, Mike. So, you know what? I'm sorry. That's not being transphobic. Again, I'm a very literal person. I'm an educator. So when I think of phobia, I think as it's defined, an irrational fear. I'm not afraid of trans people. I'm not afraid of gay people. You want to know what I'm afraid of? I'm afraid of the Eagles winning the Super Bowl because I hate their fan base. Okay, you want to know what I'm scared of? I'm scared of like my property taxes going up. That's a phobia. Okay, but just because I tell the truth about trans people and that they're mentally ill and that I'm sorry, I'm not going to buy into your delusion. I'm under no obligation to accept your delusions. Sorry. Listen, just because I don't support Pride Month or, you know, here in Hudson County, I'm like, well, you know, municipalities are more concerned with pronouns and property taxes. That's true. You know, they're painting crosswalks when at the end of the day, we should hire more cops. We should worry about property taxes and public safety. I'm sorry, like that's not high on my agenda. But it seems like, you know, whether it's identity politics, and we all know that last November we saw an absolute repudiation of this. Seems like they haven't gotten the memo here in New Jersey, whether it's the Star Ledger, NJ Spotlight News, Insider NJ, the Asbury Park Press. They're going to keep going on with this bullshit. And it just seems like, hey, they'll lose readers, but as long as that corporate donor base is there, you know, what do they have to worry about?
Exactly. And by the way, to add to it, the elitism in media, it's not just the host, it's the institutions. I'll never forget, I was with Scott Fegler's campaign and we went to NJ Spotlight News' headquarters to go do a podcast with Brianna Vannozzi, and I sat in the control room with the staff, and Scott was answering a very politically pointed question on abortion that, she by design, it was a horrible question, right? I don't even think she knows how, the abortion law works or how an abortion even works. So, the question was confusing. Ergo, the question confuses Scott. And you know what they're doing in the control room where all they're supposed to be doing is producing and mixing sound and making sure the camera's on? They're rolling their eyes and they're, making comments, whatever. And I'm just sitting back. And after the podcast ends, I said, by the way, Scott Fegler's campaign manager, and it's like they saw a ghost. They got caught. And I went from the control room, I went right to Brianna's assistant and to Brianna herself and told them, listen, I'm not this type of guy that just is going to go and beat up on people, but that is extremely disrespectful. And no matter how you feel about abortion, no matter how you feel about Republicans or Donald Trump, when you're in the media, right, and saying that you're just being a reporter, then report the facts. Don't have a team that is pushing you on to go and try to, get someone in a gotcha moment. And also raise your team better too. Maybe then NJ Spotlight News will have more reputable reporting. And shame on people like, David Cruz and Brianna Venozzi, who I guess peaked in high school and want to make NJ Spotlight News their forum for friends. I've never seen such a disrespect for their guests, such a disrespect for guests, and such a disrespect for New Jerseyans.
Yeah.
Again, regardless, you could be a gigantic Cheryl voter, you could be a massive Jack guy. But when you have an elitist media sticking its nose up at you, that's not fair to anybody, and shame on them.
You know what? I couldn't say it any better. And it's been pretty PG on Real Talk for 5 years, but I think at some point, you're a pro wrestling fan. I think you'll appreciate me shooting. I shoot every week on this show,
Yeah.
as you know. But yeah, you know what? Fuck NJ Spotlight News. I mean, they're just
Look, sometimes, man, you just got to grab a steel
listen.
chair.
Yeah, fuck David Cruz. It's garbage journalism over there. I don't have a problem saying it. I'm going to delve into that during final thoughts. But listen, that example right there is perfectly illustrates how biased they are here. Where at the end of the day, they're all about gotcha questions. And mind you, when David Cruz like ejaculates over himself, when let's say Cory Booker's in the studio, never once is there a hard question for Spartacus or for the Timu Obama there, Cory Booker. So it's always interesting to me when I see that with Uncle Dave, or even like the print, or not so much the print, but like the online editions of news. I mean, listen, take your pick with Insider NJ. There is no shortage of Trump derangement syndrome at that garbage news site, right? Like Max Pizarro, who, let's be honest, like, does this lazy bastard ever leave his house? Of course not. Like, or Jay Lasseter, Bob Hennelly, take your pick, John Van Vliet. Uh, Again, the Asbury Park Press. I mean, to your point about the Star Ledger, I mean, Tom Moran ultimately drove that newspaper into the ground. And unfortunately, I grew up in the Star Ledger. I used to grow up buying it on Sundays. Obviously, it looked as thick as my dissertation, right? So it was like one of those things where you enjoy reading it. And what happened? You leave people to their own devices, and then NJ.com and the Star Ledger basically went downhill because of clowns like Tom Moran. So when I hear of examples like that, it only, again, the reason independent media like you and I are thriving, Mike, is because people watch, dimwits like David Cruz and say, this isn't believable journalism. This is blatantly slanted. And I think more and more people are waking up to that, Mike.
They are, and look at the main driver of Trump's media presence last year, of President Trump's media presence. He went on the Joe Rogan podcast. He went on with Theo Vaughn. He went on with a number of these, broadcasters, as they call them. But you know what? You have folks that, let's be honest, aren't necessarily wise to the political system, but they're Americans like anyone else, and they're curious, right? And their curiosity leads them to be unbiased and hold people accountable, right? Where they ask general questions and they're researched and whatnot, because, they don't want to be seen as schmucks, but they also want to be able to better understand the issue. And when you have, offers made by Joe Rogan to Kamala Harris to say, hey, we want to have your side on too, which again, I certainly applaud, you know, Mr. Rogan for being bipartisan in that respect, and because it lends to the apoliticalness of his show. But Kamala Harris will only do that on her terms, right? That right there, that type of elitism is what turns Americans off. And I can guarantee you on that Joe Rogan podcast, you had a number of people that said, you know what? I may not totally agree with President Trump. I may not even like him, but the guy came on and answered questions. And, you saw Joe Rogan did push back on him a couple times. And Trump having a gregarious personality. He took it in stride, right? And they
Yeah.
laughed about it. Isn't it nice to be able to watch, two folks having a conversation, really hammering out the issues and being
Yeah.
able to share a joke
Yeah.
rather than a bunch of suits and leather seats talking past each other?
Yeah. Again, Mike, and one of the reasons that what you and I do, I think, is so unique and distinct is we do talk to everybody. Again, folks, if you're a regular watcher of my show, I talk to Republicans, I talk to Democrats, I talk to leftists, I talk to socialists, I talk to middle, I talk to everybody. And again, in 5+ years that this show's been on the air, Mike, there's never been one abrupt ending to the program. There's never been a screaming match. And I've had some insufferable people on this show. Trust me when I tell you. But never once has there been a screaming match. Never once is it like that final showdown, the contract signing before WrestleMania where all hell breaks loose. No, that's not the case. And I think that the reason that independent media like you and I and others in New Jersey are thriving is because we do talk to everybody. Now, having said that, Central Jersey Newswire, one of my favorite sites to visit. What can you tell us about the future of Central Jersey Newswire?
So we have been relatively quiet, but one of the things we're happy to announce, and I'm excited to announce it on your program, is we're going to be having a podcast, and we're going to talk to everybody. We're going to talk to the movers and shakers. We're going to talk to the small business owners, the heroes and the villains in New Jersey. We're going to talk to everybody, and it's going to be interviews unlike anything you've ever seen, right, in New Jersey, right? We're going to be keeping people honest. We're going to have better in-depth investigative reporting that we've been known for, like when we did our investigative report on policy 5756 and what the truth behind that was, and how that helped motivate school boards to take action and overturn the policy, where we even produced a fact sheet for people, right? And even, regional investigative reporting of holding politicians accountable and getting to the truth of what life is like in New Jersey, but also celebrating New Jersey. We have some wonderful people in this state that don't have the last names Bon Jovi, Springsteen, or Sinatra, right? We have regular, everyday people, I'm sure you know them, that, make life in the Garden State great. Let's talk to them and why they love New Jersey so much. You know, it's great to have pride in New Jersey. When I was in Washington, all I heard was, we're the armpit of America. And I would tell people, if you take a moment and meet people, I had friends come up in 2022 to New Jersey, and, they were surprised that everybody says hi to each other. People have general pride in where they live. Everybody's friendly, right? We're going to highlight that. And the best of all, we're going to have fun. You're not going to find elitist liberal snobbery, right? I don't know anything more than you do. I am just simply curious about why people love New Jersey and how we can make it a better place to live, work, and raise a family. And I'm so excited to be able to, bring that. We're working on a studio right now. There is going to be a little bit of a rebrand to it. We'd love to have you on and not just hear about, your show, but also hear about you, and hear about the person, right? As opposed to the politics too. So I'm excited to be able to start bringing that to people soon.
I'm excited to hear that, man. Congrats on that. And
Thank
listen,
you.
anytime you reach out to me, I'll certainly clear my schedule. And if you have a studio, I don't mind taking the drive down whatsoever. So you do let me know that.
I
Um,
absolutely will.
Before I let you go, man, obviously it is mid-July, coming up in 2 weeks. It's what we grew up on, the biggest fight of the summer. It's SummerSlam, and I remember the very first one in 1988 at the Mecca of professional wrestling at Madison Square Garden under then the World Wrestling Federation. And who would have known? Decades later, SummerSlam
Yeah.
would become a two-night event, and we'll see that at
The
MetLife.
first ever 2 night
First ever
SummerSlam.
two-night event. And obviously coming up in just a couple of weeks. We grew up on Vince McMahon running the WWF and WWE. That has changed drastically in recent years with the acquisition by TKO, obviously buying the UFC, buying WWE. It's a very different corporate sort of atmosphere around WWE for some time now without a McMahon actually running the company. And obviously this past weekend we've seen other professional wrestling promotions attempting to compete with WWE. We see All Elite Wrestling had their show in Arlington, Texas, give or take who you want to believe with attendance, but a 7-hour pay-per-view. You had Saturday night's main event on Saturday on NBC and Peacock. You had the all women's Evolution premium live event last night. big pro wrestling fan here, and obviously we saw the retirement of Goldberg. For any of us that grew up during the '90s and the Attitude Era, to quote Bret the Hitman Hart, Bill Goldberg thankfully retired this Saturday. I was tired of Bill Goldberg. I get it. It arouses nostalgia. It sells merch, the metrics, all the bullshit that these companies want, Mike. But I'm glad to see Bill Goldberg go. Certainly another chapter from our childhood. Certainly, we don't see The Rock wrestling anymore. We don't see Triple H wrestling anymore. The Undertaker's retired. Stone Cold Steve Austin's retired. Ric Flair obviously is much older. He's retired. So is Hulk Hogan. Take us back to when your fandom for pro wrestling started.
My fandom for pro wrestling started. I have a picture. I'll make sure to text it to you afterwards. I don't think it's I don't think it's totally great for public consumption. I have a picture of myself and King Kong Bundy in Seabright, New Jersey, in about 2005, and now it's like I'm looking in the mirror, right? Just another big bald, angry New Jerseyan. But that really started when I was about 8 years old, and obviously as I've gotten older, I've now appreciated as programming and as the teledrama that it is. And they're incredible athletes, they're incredible actors, and it's really I tell people it's an experience unlike any other. When I was younger, I went to a live taping of SmackDown up at the Meadowlands, and to see the Undertaker, truly as the dead man, and feel that in the audience was great, right? To see then, Batista was the big champion, before he went woke and started to look like Dionne Warwick. Love Shawn Michaels and Triple H and all of them. But what you're seeing now, and kudos to WWE Creative, is you saw Trish Stratus lose at Evolution, which was a fantastic interview. You're seeing the retirement of Bill Goldberg, right? You're seeing a lot of final matches and final runs. And I like the fact that they're allowing these legends to pass the torch gracefully. I'm a big Goldberg fan. I also am a big Bret Hart fan. That's their beef. It's not mine. But, I wish Bill had been healthier, because, he's certainly known for being, a big slammer, not totally technical.
Sure.
And, he was certainly withstanding those legendary chops, but, kudos to Gunther for, making the mighty Bill Goldberg tap. But, and it's difficult for folks like you and I. These are the guys we grew up with. They're the heroes, but it's a new generation now. We should be excited for that, because, it's going to be folks younger than us. And then we're going to be able to, when we see, the Hall of Fame in a number of years, say, yeah, I remember I remember the Usos' first match. I remember when Cody Rhodes made his comeback.
Yeah, my goodness. Mike, let me ask you this, because obviously we've been watching pro wrestling for a better part of almost our entire adult lives, maybe even going back into childhood and adolescence. Listen, the audience has become a lot smarter in the last 30 years. Obviously, the creation of the internet back in the late 90s, early 2000s, before social media, certainly you had websites. You had the dirt sheet websites, obviously, and then when social media, you saw the creation of Facebook and YouTube and Instagram and Twitter and Snapchat and TikTok. And obviously you've seen influencers now really sort of, exposing the business along with, retired talent with their own podcasts. Listen, it's still real to some of us, right?
Exactly.
Whenever someone, whether it's, over the years, I've had plenty of ex-girlfriends that be like, I can't believe you watch wrestling. And I'd be like, well, you watch the Kardashians. Like, what the F is the difference, It's predetermined, whatever. But, when you go to all of these meet and greets, and I still go to them, I know you look at my social media and you see as well as you do too. I mean, I go meet a lot of retired superstars, both male and female, and listen, their bodies break down. I mean, that's a hard ring surface. Okay, I mean, we're talking about like wooden boards with maybe, if anything, an inch of cushion. I mean, it takes a toll on their bodies. There's nothing fake about hip replacements or knee replacements or back surgeries or neck surgeries. We've seen men and women deal with catastrophic injuries over the decades. So when I go to these meet and greets and I meet wrestlers, and listen, when I meet Ric Flair, he is my all-time favorite. He's my idol. I love the Nature Boy. When I go to these meet and greets, I see what these men and women have put themselves through for us, for entertainment. It's given them a living. Some of them obviously still struggle financially. It just breaks your heart because you know that these men and women have put their bodies through hell and back to entertain us. So when someone says, okay, sure, it's predetermined, yes, it's no different than a movie script. The director sees, who's going to win, who's going to lose. But at the end of the day, these are men and women putting their bodies on the line. And as far as I'm concerned, I can't thank them enough for their sacrifices.
Yeah, it's storytelling and
Yeah.
it's an art form like any other. And spoiler alert to anybody watching this conversation, we all get old. Our former glory isn't always restored, and you have to pass the torch to the younger generation. And to bring it full circle, you're seeing that happen with WWE. You're going to start to see that in the political environment now. That people our age are going to have to start stepping up and taking, leadership positions and roles in their community. And thank God for great storytelling like the WWE, right? That adds another layer of what we can aspire to as a society. Whether you think, I hate to say it, Johnny Tremaine wasn't real, right? Huckleberry Finn wasn't real, but
Yeah.
it meant something to people and it helped define us. Right, 1984. Well, 1984 is real now, but at the same time, we look to those heroes so that we could better see inside of ourselves so that we could create a better community. So whether you're seeing that through movies or WWE, thank God for the people who do that, for the writers, for the actors, for the wrestlers who do those types of things, because we become a much more beautiful society.
Absolutely. And by the way, I mean, obviously he was there yesterday at MetLife, but the class of 2013 WWE Hall of Famer, the current president of the United States, who knows? Maybe he'll make an appearance at SummerSlam. He was just at MetLife
Maybe.
yesterday. We'll see. Again, 2013, when WrestleMania was here, he obviously was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. The only
The
American president
clothesline heard around the world.
the only American president to do that, for sure. But Mike, listen, it's always great to talk with you. I think you and the Central Jersey Newswire, I'm very excited to see what this rebrand is going to look like. You've been doing good work for so long. And quite frankly, I really respect the work you do.
Thank you.
And it's not easy.
Likewise.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, man. I really appreciate it, brother. But certainly, I appreciate you giving me a few minutes of your time today. It's certainly not easy doing what we do, but again, keep up the great work. I'm looking forward to this rebrand, and I'll give you the last word here tonight on Real Talk.
I'm going to harken back to our last discourse. When we were talking about whether or not people think just because something's fake or something's scripted that they shouldn't believe in it. You know, I I can liken that to the people who think, oh, New Jersey isn't worth saving. It's always going to be a blue state. You know, Nothing can beat hope and enthusiasm, right? And when you have hope and enthusiasm guiding you, you can do anything. You can turn a blue state into a red state. You can finally have a Governor Jack Ciattarelli. You can finally inspire people to be able to say, you know what, enough with the corporate media. I'm going to do it myself. You can have enough people to say, I've had enough. I'm going to run for mayor. I'm going to run for commissioner, right? Let's get back to that New Jersey where you may not like us either, but we love the hell out of our state and we're all going to step up. And I'm calling all New Jerseyans to band together, especially all Republicans, especially you holdouts, to band together because I truly believe brighter days are ahead for all of us and that we all can share in the American dream because I don't believe it's going to die anytime soon, man.
I'm with you. And before I forget, because I knew this was in my notes here, obviously there might be different categories: best talker, best gimmick, best worker. But right now, I'm gonna put you on the spot here. You're Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling.
Oh man, I've always wanted to answer this. Okay, my Mount Rushmore: Stone Cold Steve Austin,
Okay.
The Undertaker,
Okay.
right? Dusty Rhodes,
All right.
and you're gonna flip here, Randy Orton.
Okay, interesting. Okay. Certainly, listen, I think we can have discussions, and I always have these debates with my fellow friends who are pro wrestling fans and devoted fans like myself. I always like to have the categories of like the Mount Rushmores of different, of workers, because whoever's on the Mount Rushmore of workers is very different than the talkers and
Mhm.
then the gimmicks and the longevity. Because, for example, if we're talking about the Mount Rushmore of longevity, I mean, you have to talk about Chris Jericho. He's still going,
Absolutely.
right? The Undertaker for how long he went.
Absolutely.
Certainly Sting, having only retired last year, obviously longevity. But then when we're talking about the Mount Rushmore of workers, we're talking about Bret Hart, we're talking about Shawn Michaels, we're
Yep.
talking about, and I know it's taboo to say his name out loud, Chris Benoit, Randy Savage, for example, best talkers in the business, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Steve Austin, The
Mhm.
Rock. So it's always a very tricky to have those
It,
combos because it's almost like, well, it's like these GOAT discussions. It's like, well, what are we talking about specifically? Because if we're just going to put them all together, it kind of makes it complicated. But to your
yeah.
Mount Rushmore, listen, I think that people don't give Randy Orton his flowers enough. Maybe not the best talker of his generation, but my God, a phenomenal worker,
Hmm.
a finisher that really, Diamond Dallas Page got into the business very late in his career, in his late 30s, so he doesn't have the longevity. Randy Orton does, and when you think of the RKO, I mean, you think about how many historic people have suffered at the
Hmm.
hands of the RKO. I got to listen. I'll give you that one. Randy Orton, hell of a competitor. Very interesting Mount Rushmore for sure, man. But that's what makes pro wrestling and the debate interesting because it is very subjective. It's who do you think is a good worker? Who's a good talker? Who's a great gimmick? Again,
Yep.
these are very different categories, Mike.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this. I'll end with this. The two people that my career has benefited the most from aren't on the Mount Rushmore. Paul Heyman and Arn Anderson.
Wow. Okay, interesting. I mean, I think if you had a Mount Rushmore for managers, I think you can make the case for Heyman, Jim Cornette, Bobby the Brain Heenan, right? I mean, you can kind of we could go on for hours here, right? When it comes to
Absolutely. And again, whoever has inspired you to be the best version of yourself and has left an indelible mark that is going to make you a better member of your community, a better servant, a better leader, then you know what? Maybe we add a whole bunch of phases to Mount Rushmore because at the end of the day, that's the true measure.
I mean, the reason I do this show and the reason I have my personality is the late great Rowdy Roddy Piper. Enough said with that one for sure. But Mike, I want to thank you for your time. Again, God bless you. I look forward to seeing the rebrand later on during this summer and fall. And keep me posted here. And again, we'll keep talking as this election season heats up. Gubernatorial race is heating up. The state assembly seats are heating up. And obviously, municipal races all throughout New Jersey are going to be the talk of obviously this election cycle. So we'll be covering it here on Real Talk as well as the Central Jersey Newswire. Folks, their founder and publisher, Mike DeRobbio, joins us live here tonight on Real Talk. Mike, God bless you, brother. Enjoy SummerSlam, and we'll talk to you soon here on the Jersey First Television Network.
Thank you always for having me, Fernando. God bless.
God bless, brother. Take care. Folks, good stuff there with Mike DeRobbio. Again, the founder and publisher of the Central Jersey Newswire. Great traffic so far, folks. I'm seeing these numbers on Twitter, all the live streams here. We appreciate you, folks. Again, 7 o'clock on the dot here on the East Coast. We appreciate you making this a part of your Monday night viewing. Obviously, thunderstorms and it's raining outside. We appreciate you making this a part of your Monday night viewing here on the Jersey First Television Network. Again, folks, make sure you check out Central Jersey Newswire. Check them out on Facebook, also on their website. And of course, that rebrand is something we're all going to be looking forward to in the next few months. So stay tuned for that and all the great work that Mike DeRobbio and all the great staff does at the Central Jersey Newswire. Folks, again, as I said, it's 7 o'clock here on the East Coast, right on the dot. You know what time it is. It's what you've been waiting for. It's time for Final Thoughts. Yes, folks, and obviously, if you've been watching the last few weeks, certainly I have taken great joy in eviscerating some of the more insufferable women in not just Hudson County politics, but New Jersey politics. You know, the cat ladies, the Karens, the insufferable feminists. I mean, folks, you can just look at this right behind me, and I mean, I don't know about you, but you can smell the stench of cat piss by looking at this picture. You ever seen a picture, right? And sometimes you're like, just by looking at a picture, you can just hear a scream, right? You've seen those photos, right? You ever seen a photo of Ric Flair? You just know that every time you see, the first thing that comes to mind is, woo, you can just hear it, right? Folks, here's an example of when you look at a picture, you could just smell the stench of kitty litter and cat piss emanating from this group right here. But I'm going to take a break this week from going after and eviscerating the insufferable women that seem to, hate Fernando Uribe, and somehow I still live rent free in their head. The typical insufferable women, right? Like Kayla Burrell and Megan Ixom and Amy Wilson and Erin Ferrer, right? And, other women like Stuart Thomas from the James Solomon campaign. Again, now I'm going to take a break from eviscerating these useless humans because I think they need a break. I mean, I think I've cooked them more than, steaks during the 4th of July barbecues. But from a bunch of useless humans to another useless human, let's talk about Uncle Dave, folks, and David Cruz. And it seems to me, folks, that David Cruz is the symbol of why people lose faith in the establishment media, right? Why people, regular people, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, college-educated women, single dads, you name it, folks, a bunch of different demographics have lost faith with the establishment media, not just on the national level. Folks, you notice how bad the ratings are for CNN and MSNBC and the readership for the New York Times or the Washington Post, right? I mean, it's downright in the toilet. Same thing here in New Jersey. We've seen the erosion of quality journalism in New Jersey, right? Star Ledger going out of print. Even here locally in Hudson County, the Jersey Journal, which was, again, published for more than 100 years, that too also met its extinction. Why? Because of useless left-wing journalists out there. More propagandists than anything. But at the state level, folks, we have a plethora of journalists that do us a disservice on a daily basis. We all know the websites. We all know Insider NJ and Max Pizarro, Jay Lassiter, Bob Hennelly, Alan Steinberg, John Van Vliet, and all the other contributors, or the Asbury Park Press. Okay? Or Politico New Jersey with Matt Friedman, who, let's be honest, I mean, if he's not having a full-blown erection about growing weed in his backyard, is he really doing any work? Probably not. Right? Or NorthJersey.com and the Bergen Record with Chucky, Charles Style, who, let's be honest, if he leaves his house twice a year, that's a miracle. But folks, you want to know what makes Uncle Dave truly insufferable? The audacity of David Cruz to think that somehow this lazy bastard has cornered the market on what real journalism is. Okay? Now, again, I could go for the low-hanging fruit because I'm Cuban and he's Puerto Rican, and I could go for the low-hanging fruit, but I won't. But what's interesting about Uncle Dave is the audacity of him and some of his opinions about who he thinks are journalists in New Jersey. Well, Dave, here's a newsflash for you. And again, if you want to put your sandwich down, your fourth sandwich of the day that you order from Uber Eats or Grubhub, right? Organizations that are, I guess, the governing bodies of journalism in New Jersey, such as the New Jersey Press Association and the New Jersey Society for Professional Journalists, they're the ones in charge of bestowing press credentials in New Jersey. And guess who has one? Yes, Fernando Uribe. Now, I get it that Uncle Dave grew up in Hudson County, grew up in Jersey City. He cut his teeth in the business. He was an editor with Hudson Reporter, a shitty one from what I was told from journalists that worked there. And I get it that Uncle Dave got lucky joining with NJTV and then NJ Spotlight News, and of course succeeding the late great Michael Aaron in hosting Reporters Roundtable. I mean, let's be fair. I mean, I don't think anyone could ever fill his shoes in the greatness of Michael Aaron, a guy who I still miss to this day, who, as a matter of fact, we're actually approaching the 1-year anniversary of his passing. I still think of Michael almost every day, and the contributions he made to journalism, and the contributions he made to me personally as a journalist. And if we can all aspire to be even 1/10 of what Michael Aaron was, then we're doing a good job in the business. But you want to know what I dislike the most about Uncle Dave is sort of the audacity to think that, again, he's the pinnacle of journalism in New Jersey. When this lazy bastard barely works an entire year. See, folks, unlike Uncle Dave, see, what I do is I work all year. I talk to everybody. I don't roll my eyes at differing opinions like Uncle Dave does. Okay? I don't sit at home during the summertime playing with my dick. I mean, as if Dave has seen his dick lately. I mean, that's another conversation for another day. You know, probably hasn't seen his dick since the Bush administration. Which one? You decide. Okay? But for journalists like yours truly that works every week to put out quality content and content that actually gets traffic, organic traffic, not the little Mickey Mouse views that, Chatbox or Reporters Roundtable gets, like real traffic, like real talk. But I got to hand it to Uncle Dave. A broken clock is right twice a day too. And last week, of course, Uncle Dave, obviously since he's on summer vacation, well, when isn't he on vacation? Decided to venture out of his house in that shithole area that he lives in the south side of Jersey City. And for a guy that gets very fickle and sensitive about, like, well, Dave, if you live in a shitty area, then you have to own that. Like, you can't be menstruating and get all sensitive about the fact that if you live in a shitty area, well, you live in a shitty area. Don't get all menstrual about it. But kudos to Uncle Dave leaving his house, actually doing some real work about a topic that, quite frankly, I mean, I guess, you have to find some to talk about and some to do. But this is an issue that, quite frankly, I think should have been on his radar years ago. Because unlike Dave, I mean, I leave my house regularly. And you know what, Dave, for someone that has a lot of opinions about Fernando Uribe, here's an opinion maybe that you're not aware of. Aside from being an award-winning journalist, I'm also an award-winning philanthropist. And what I do every year is participate in walks and raise money for different causes. Right? So while Uncle Dave might say that, I don't know, I'm anti-trans and more on that later, or anti-woman, David, I do more for women in a year than you've done probably in the last 10. Whether it's raising money for families affected by Alzheimer's and dementia with volunteering for Alzheimer's New Jersey, or every October volunteering for the American Cancer Society and making strides against breast cancer. I'm actually doing for women. Okay? But when I do the breast cancer walk or the Alzheimer's walk, it's normally at Liberty State Park. And what I like to do when I go there is walk by the 9/11 memorial that's at Liberty State Park. And for years, I've seen that display not up to par. And I've made a point to send out emails and make phone calls and try to talk to legislators, whether it be at the local level or at the state level, or even at the federal level, to hopefully get that fixed, to hopefully, do some justice for families that were affected by September 11th and the terrorist attacks by violent jihadists. I get it. You need some to do. I maybe had a quota. Like, I got to do a story once a month. I guess since I'm home, I'm scratching my ass. Cool, David. I'll give you your credit about this story that you just released last week.
It's been more than 2 decades since the September 11th attacks, and the Empty Sky Memorial at Liberty State Park in Jersey City is meant to serve as the state's official monument to honor New Jersey's victims. But the memorial is in the middle of a fight between state officials, September 11th family members, and advocates, as well as the designer over the conditions of the memorial site. So is the memorial actually finished, and is there funding to support any redesign or restoration? Senior political correspondent David Cruz went to the memorial.
That's a miracle. He actually went to the memorial, left his house, and did work. I mean, folks, Uncle Dave, trabajando. Oye, y ese huevón trabajando, y ese milagro. Yeah. Dios mío. Let's continue.
Recently to investigate.
Almost by default, the Empty Sky Memorial at Liberty State Park is the most visited memorial in the state, with an estimated 5 million people walking through it in a year. It's the centerpiece of a 2.5-acre, specifically landscaped site that its original designers and a panel of 9/11 family members expected to look like this, with iron cladding surrounding the entire structure and inscriptions on the exterior. Instead, the memorial today, 14 years after it was dedicated, looks like this: unkempt, neglected, and in decline.
This memorial is my life's work.
Jessica Jamroz is the original designer of Empty Sky. When she sees what's here, the naked, cracked exterior, the grove of dead trees, weeds growing in light fixtures that don't work, and broken information kiosks that could let anyone know what this was supposed to look like, it can be a lot. We're sitting here in front of...
I feel as though the interdepartmental nature of this project is what collapses it from getting anywhere. People agree and people disagree, and sometimes the governor really cares, and sometimes there are other things going on in their agenda. The families were promised a befitting memorial to honor their loved ones, and this is not what it is right now.
Jamroz says she has contractual rights of approval to any changes in the design. Acknowledge that the memorial is incomplete. It's unclear if they acknowledge Jamroz's claim to final approval over changes. Jamroz says she's looking for a hero, but with no money in the new state budget to get the project done, there doesn't appear to be one in sight. The DEP says the plaza surrounding the Central Railroad Terminal and the rest of the grounds surrounding the memorial are due for a major makeover. The designer and some 9/11 families hope that by then, this memorial will finally be complete. At Liberty State Park, I'm David Cruz, NJ Spotlight News.
Wow. I'm impressed. Look at Uncle Dave leaving his house to do some actual work. David, again, the reason these little feel-good little segments by you aren't believable is because guess what? You live in Jersey City, don't you? I live in Hudson County. Again, I'm not sure how much work you've done, but I know when I participate in charity walks, which I do regularly, I too have been disgusted by the shape of the 9/11 memorial. I've actually tried to get to work and try to reach out to people to see and get some answers. 14 years later, this is when now you're doing something about this? Again, folks, this is what makes people like David Cruz just disingenuous. Dave, if you're really concerned, you should have been on this shit like years ago. Not when it's like, you need to fulfill your quota for one story during the summer. Okay? That's what makes David Cruz unlikable. And even more so too, and this is the truth, David, and this is one of the reasons I don't like you. And I know you don't like me, and I don't really give a shit. But the reality is that you'll have the audacity to, run my name through the mud. First of all, let me be very clear. Just like the idiots I talked about the last couple of weeks, all these cat ladies and Karens and social justice clowns and woke fools, there's nothing homophobic or transphobic about Fernando Uribe. Okay? Again, I'm very literal, David. A phobia is an irrational fear. I don't have an irrational fear of gay people. I have plenty of friends who are gay. Okay? I just do. From adolescence to adulthood to grad school to I have them. I interact with them. I'm very respectful of them, and I treat them with dignity and decorum. I don't ever wish them any harm. I'm also not transphobic. But David, what I'm not going to do is subscribe to someone's delusions. Okay? Yeah, sure, there are people out there that believe the earth is flat. We all know that's bullshit. We all know that's not true. But people will still be insistent and indignant about their delusions. I am under no obligation to subscribe to your delusions. No matter how much you think you're right, when we all know it's delusional. Same thing, it's about trans people, David. No amount of makeup, no amount of chromosomes or hormones or surgeries is ever going to make a man a woman. Okay? A man is born with a penis. He has testicles. He has a vas deferens. Okay? That's never going to change. No amount of make-believe and dress-up is ever going to make a man a woman. And I don't subscribe to the notion that just because you're delusional, that I have to coddle your delusions. I'm sorry. It doesn't make me a transphobe. That makes me a regular person that's commonsensical. Okay? See, that's the problem with certain, groups that are fixating on identity politics, David. You haven't gotten the memo since November. So if you think my brand is pretty toxic, well, let me just say this to you, Dave. How's your traffic lately? Because I know my traffic's pretty organic. There's nothing boosted. There's no ads being bought for it. I'm giving you organic traffic, folks, every single week. And as for any accusations about me being anti-woman, David, what are you doing for women every year? I know what I do. I raise thousands of dollars with my philanthropy, along with a great team of co-hosts that I work with every single year, and local businesses that believe in my brand of award-winning philanthropy. Folks, again, look behind me. I don't have to tell you. You can see it behind me. I don't fit in this house with all the awards. But I don't do it for the awards. I do it because it makes a difference. Whether it's raising awareness about Alzheimer's and dementia, or to hopefully trying to defeat breast cancer. And that's what I do every year, David, for women. What do you do? Oh, that's right. You don't do shit. But yet you're going to have the audacity to come impugn my integrity? Mother effer. That's not going to fly on my watch. Okay? And I get it. It's nice to have a nice, comfortable job like you, earning $100,000 a year, sitting at home, scratching your ass, playing with your dick. I mean, I don't know. At least I know when I go to the urinal, I can see mine, but that's another conversation, David. David, you're lazy. Plain and simple. It's hard to take someone like you who's lazy very seriously. I get it. You can go work and leave your house. Me alegro. Felicidades que tú no estás un huevón como todo el mundo piensa. But you're lazy, David. I'm actually working every week, as well as other independent journalists that are working hard every week. And the only reason anyone watches NJ Spotlight News, folks, let's be fair, is the nice-looking eye candy on there. Brianna Vanozzi, Raven Santana, Joanna Gagos. Again, these are nice-looking MILFs. These are nice-looking chicks to look at. Okay? Just like the way we watch sports media. Okay? Good-looking chick talking the news and talking sports. Hey, you'll hook me right away. Nobody's watching NJ Spotlight News, folks, for David Cruz. No one's sitting there with his condescending tone when he talks to anyone that he doesn't agree with. Sure, when Cory Booker's there, he blows a load in his pants. I mean, just the thought of that visualization is awful. And when he's talking to left-leaning propagandists like Amy Torres, Patty Campos Medina, and other left-wingers in New Jersey, politics and activism, that coddle illegals, that care more about pronouns than property taxes and public safety. See, folks, the difference between David Cruz and I is I'm just much more interesting to watch. I mean, I'm nicer to look at, but that goes without saying. But what really, folks, what David Cruz truly represents is the laziness by the establishment media. And that's why nobody trusts the establishment media. And when we think about mistrust and the dislike that we have for establishment media, especially here in New Jersey, folks, it starts con este huevón, David Cruz. And those are my final thoughts. Folks, before we call it a week here, obviously, yes, you can see there, yes. Bravo to Uncle Dave working once during the summer. Yes, a milagro. But folks, before we call it a week here, obviously, thank you so much for the ongoing traffic that we continue to produce here. 59,000 plus views and counting for the month of June, obviously. Great traffic. Again, folks, it's real traffic because it's real conversations, because it's real talk. And to everyone that tunes in every single week, thank you for continuing to make Real Talk a success with Jersey First TV, 5+ years and counting. Again, without all of you, these numbers wouldn't be possible. And that's our show for this week, folks. Once again, I want to thank Mike DeRobbio, the founder and publisher of the Central Jersey Newswire. Folks, again, make sure that check us out on Facebook. Make sure you like us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and X. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube. Again, folks, like, comment, and share. It gets the show out to more people. Trust me, it really makes a difference with the algorithm. So I appreciate that. And of course, whether you get your podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud, download Jersey First and take it with you anywhere, anytime during these summer months. Again, folks, I can't say enough what a privilege it is to be on the dream team of Garden State Media. That's right, folks. It is Jersey First TV. What can I say? My amazing tag team partner, Elizabeth Nader, with their show, The Nader Narrative, every Thursday. Check your local listings for start times. And of course, brand new episodes of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe come to you every Monday night. Again, check your start times on social media. We appreciate you making this a part of your Monday night viewing. Always remember, folks, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always Real Talk right here on the Jersey First Television Network. And folks, as you all know, and again, it's a fact. We appreciate you always tuning in here and certainly supporting us the way you all do every single week here on the Jersey First Television Network. That's right, folks. It's me, the generational talent in Garden State Media. Certainly your trusted source for strong, independent journalism. And of course, I'm the hero you need right now. Because as we all know, the establishment media continues to lie to you and really be of no service to you. Guess who won't be? Fernando Uribe, folks, here to make sure that you get the best news and commentary on what's going on in today's political climate, not just in New Jersey, but everything in the political climate. We appreciate making this a part, once again, of your Monday night viewing. Folks, again, check out, obviously, our archives and certainly like, comment, and share tonight's episode and all of our episodes here on the Jersey First Television Network. Folks, again, please party responsibly. Again, thanks for stopping by. Take care of your elderly neighbors and kids during these hot summer months. And again, we appreciate you making Jersey First TV your trusted source for strong, independent journalism every single week. Folks, that's right. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Take care of yourselves. And once again, stay classy, everyone.